Dzień dobry, Dan.
Dzień dobry.
Hello, Dan.
Hi, Dan.
Dan.
Hello. Hi. Hi.
Hi. I've been asked to say a few words to welcome you, and I guess it's a compliment that you're probably the only speaker I could imagine who I kind of wouldn't need to prepare in advance. My friend Camilla and me, we refer to you colloquially as our hero, Dan Bloom, with only a slight touch of irony. And for all your erudition and everything that you contribute to our understanding in Gestalt of Husserl, of Gestalt's roots, you will always be remembered by me for your portrayal of the ghost of Christmas phenomenology in New Gestalt Voices Christmas pantomime from 2 years ago.
Yes. Yes.
This man has unused talents as an actor, and I can threaten you, Dan, that recording is still available online if anybody would like to experience Dan the so my apologies for embarrassing you, Dan, but warm welcome, and great to have you here.
It's with great pride that I hear that. And oh, gee, how do I follow an introduction like that slowly? You know, I came here at a different time, time. Our times changed, and my experience with Europe is chaotic twice a year. And so I'm coming to you out of a place of chaos. Yet, I also know that although our clocks are different, I'm joining our time together. And whatever time we have, it is our time. I have to confirm my speaking language, and it is not Polish, and it is English. And I see, John, I didn't get the choice to say American English. So be it.
We invented the language, Dan.
Well, yeah. Which I am grateful, and I hope is reflected in what I'm about to say. So I put my feet on my ground, and I know I don't know if you can hear me stomp my feet, that this ground can extend and does extend to your ground. So to that sense, even though this is our time together, this is our place together. And that's some of what I'm about to talk about. My topic is blood on our soil, Antaeus, the earth, and homeland. There is blood on our soil. Smoke in the air passes over the thin lines on our map that separate the boundaries of countries. Blood and smoke know no boundaries. Our earth is pockmarked by craters where houses once stood. We limp across landscapes blasted and fractured by war. Families are torn apart. People are driven from their homes. The very lines that separate nation from nation, safety from danger, are being overwhelmed. People flee, people stay. There is blood on our soil. It is as if the earth is cracking open. The foundation of our homelands is cracking. Fault lines are opening in the soul of our worlds. People are suffering, crying out, and Gestalt therapy hears their call. Our responding is not a matter of choice. It is at the core of Gestalt therapy. Responding to one another is the pulse of life, the rhythm of the process of contacting, the living experiences of being human beings, at home with one another in this world. And I here in New York, on 9th Street in Greenwich Village, in the security and relative safety of the United States, I cannot turn away from the suffering of my friends, my colleagues, and all the nameless people being crushed into the ground. We are migrants, each in our own way, each wandering in search of place. We are migrants who restlessly pass from here to there and searching for safety, searching for peace, searching for freedom. We become aliens in our own land. We search and we search. How can we all be strong in these circumstances in which hope is a fevered dream and darkness obscures any hope for dawn's light? How can we find our resilience when the very ground we stand on seems to be crumbling? I will answer. But first, a story. Classical Greek mythology hands this down to us, and it's the legend of Hercules and Antaeus. Antaeus was a powerful giant. He was the son of Poseidon, the god of the sea, and Gaia, the goddess of the earth. He guarded a crossroads at the border of his land. No one could get past Antaeus without being challenged to fight, and his might was so great that no one could survive the battle. And the myth tells us that he easily crushed those who tried to pass him, and then he ground their skulls into the earth. Antaeus. His strength drew from his connection to earth itself, the earth of his goddess, mother. His power came from the actual physical contact he had with the ground, his legs always in touch with his land's power. One day, Hercules, the famous hero, approached the true hero, John. The hero, Hercules, approached the border guarded by Antaeus. Antaeus wouldn't let him pass, and they fought. Antaeus threw Hercules to the ground, and as Antaeus approached Hercules to finally crush the hero's skull, Hercules leapt up, and faced Antaeus again. He had an idea. If he could only lift this giant from the earth, Antaeus's power would end like an electric plug yanked from its outlet. So Hercules grabbed hold of Antaeus and held him above his head, and now in the air, Antaeus was weak and vulnerable. Antaeus snapped his neck. The border Antaeus guarded was now safe and open. Hercules walked through, and no future travelers were stopped. So what is at the heart of this myth of Antaeus, and why am I telling this to you now? It's not because of Hercules' cleverness or his skill, but because it underscores the power we get from standing on the ground, and how this ground, our ground, the earth as the place of our homes and of our homelands, can be the source of our own power. And we, unlike Antaeus, can never lose touch with this ground. We are always in touch with the ground, always in touch with the ground of every figure of contacting. Gestalt therapy is sharply attuned to this. Sensitivity to the precariousness of human life is implicit in our worldview. Gestalt therapy is a lens through which we can glimpse our homelands from within shattered cities. It is a lens through which we can know that as humans living together in a complex field, we dwell with one another as citizens of a world formed by and forming us. Gestalt therapy can show us how we escape the fate of Antaeus through our personhood that ties us each other into our world. I notice that I'm talking to the panelists and not to the green dot, so but pardon my roaming eye. Gestalt therapy can show us how we escape the fate of Antaeus through our personhood, which ties us each other to our world. Even uprooted from the earth upon which our strength seems to depend, and unlike Antaeus, we are sustained by the very width and depth of our world, wide from one edge of the horizon to the other, and deep within our cultures, our histories, and the pasts we have in common. Our communities can be disrupted, but not broken. Unlike Antaeus, whose life depended on maintaining his fragile balance with the earth, we can find the strength of Hercules through contacting the nearly infinite potentialities of the contact boundary. The contact boundary that links us as figures emergent of a sustaining and unbreakable ground. To be forced from our homeland does not mean we've lost our homes. This is so even when our houses and the buildings of our cities are destroyed. Each step we take, each time we lift our feet one by one as we walk across the world, and even if we are hurled up into the air and our feet flail about, searching for something to stand on, unlike Antaeus, we stay connected to the ground that supports and restores us step by step, breath by breath. And unlike Antaeus's ground, the ground that supports us is a vital world crowded with others. I will reflect on this. I will all too briefly consider the field, contact boundary, creative adjusting, and the Lebenswelt or life world as situation and location. It's translated differently in various languages, but the German original is Lebenswelt. Our situation, which I will suggest is drawing us together at this conference. I will dig into Gestalt therapy's concepts and rearrange them into a Gestalt phenomenology and use them to uncover our concrete sense of the phenomenal homes that shelter us. I want to speak to you about how resilience of the Gestalt process that is wedged within the tensions of the forming figure, straining against our limits, and ultimately and always giving shape to creative adjusting. Straining against our limits and ultimately giving shape. This is resilience at the heart of contacting. Indeed, it is the very source of our ability to continue in all circumstances, to place one foot in front of the other. Reminded of a reference from Laura Pearl's made. She said that even in deserts, flowers may bloom. Even in deserts. And some say she was referring to her marriage. Contact boundary, creative adjusting, and the life world as situation are concepts that offer us ways to understand our suffering and resilience. We are moving through the adjustments we are compelled to make in this world, whose obstacles jam up against us and whose possibilities allow us to hope. Creatively, creative adjusting. Deserts and flowers can bloom. No, flowers can bloom in the desert. Now to the tools Gestalt therapy provides. And even in considering them in a Gestalt way, we are acting. By shining a light on our ground now, if I am being successful, I'm actually inviting us to become in touch with the basis of our living breaths. And as I said that, I put my hands on my chest. You can't see it through the camera. And I felt my chest rise and fall as I'm breathing here. And I suggest you try that together. So let's start at the beginning. That is, let us begin with experience. This is a direct quoting from Gestalt therapy. Quote, experience occurs at the boundary between the organism and its environment, primarily the skin surface and other organs of sensory and motor response. And that end quote. And this is how Pearls and Goodman began to introduce Gestalt therapy and experiential therapy par excellence. That sentence alone could be enough for an understanding of the process of experiencing. It is almost enough. Or rather, it is the bones of Gestalt therapy on which the flesh of human living, the flesh of human living must be added. We must find a way to address the experience of the physical environment and the biological organism, and also the emergence of our personhood. Because right now, you and I can take a moment and pay attention to our experience. Catch it in our gaze, embrace it in our bodies as our moving, feeling body. And we can know that the simple description of experience between the boundary of the organism and the environment is not enough. It is bloodless, even as it testifies to our existence as living organisms. It does not convey what it is like to have human experiences, to be embodied persons who love and ache, hunger and lust. To be a human of our human flesh, to be able to feel the soil of the earth, to be able to stand in the moment of dreams fulfilled, and be able to pitch our imagination forward to a dream future that organizes our hopes, or even to reflect back to our lived pasts that are essential to our humanness. We need something more in order to address these experiences. Soil, earth, and home situation, these are the grounds of the figure, these are the ground of the figure ground process and of our being aware and conscious persons with others. Ground. In English, British and American, I'm sure, ground can have different overlapping meanings. We speak of perception in terms of figure and ground, and we're all familiar with the figure ground examples in most of Gestalt therapy learning. You know, the woman who hit the picture and the thing. Ground and background are synonyms. The Gestalt therapists come to mind. Then there is the ground I stand on, excavate, and upon which we build cities. And then the ground is the earth and the soil that enables our crops to grow, to thrive. And I bring all of these meanings into play here. And perhaps something in your own languages, hopefully something in your own languages parallels this. Organism and environment are two dimensions of the ground out of which the figure of being alive is emergent. The experience of being alive. The first person and third person experiences of being alive. And this is obvious since neither you nor I actually experience the environment or ourselves as simply biological organisms. We need a better way to account for our feelings of connection to the earth, to our situation, and to one another as beings, or alive with one another in an interpersonal phenomenal field which stretches along the dimension of the past, present, and future. When our cities are being torn apart by war, it is not merely the environment that is being destroyed, although, to be sure, air, our climates, and all the psychological conditions upon which we as organisms depend in order to live are in peril. It is not merely our organism that is in peril, although it surely is. The meaning of the organism and its environment is, we claim, the location for the emergence of experience. Yet, experience does not end at this beginning. That is, it does not end with us, the simple notion of organism, environment, field. There is something else functioning. There is something else functioning. So, as I said, I import the life world, or Lebenswelt, from phenomenological philosophy and sociology and psychology as a humanistic refinement to the biophysical organism environment field. This is the life world, the Lebenswelt. It turns each moment into a relational and historical eternity. The human world is greater than its parts. It is larger than an organism and an environment of which it emerges. The life world takes us beyond organism environment to account for us as persons in the world with others, of persons crafting lives and making sense, of bringing plans to life, of fulfilling promises and making present the best and worst of our dreams, of our sense of time and place, of our home. The life world is our home. It is the gathering place of our histories, culture, values, hopes, and expectations. It is our home with one another. Life world is also the historical context in which experiences are framed. It is there before we are. It is of our ground. It is here, right here. We open our eyes to see the world that is given to us at the first sparks of our awareness. And this is the very ground of emergence. This world is already populated by others who are always already there. We are not alone in the life world. We are always with others. The life world is also a world alive with the history of those whose lives and accomplishments streamed into and became layered in our ground as the once lived past of the life world. Unlike Antaeus, no Hercules can lift us off this ground of the life world. The missiles falling in Ukraine don't merely strike the environment. They shatter the fabric of homes, families, culture, and hope, the life world. They fall in the life world in which I and others dwell. We don't bury our dead in holes in the ground, but in graves of the life world. Distances of the life world are measured in terms of presence and absence, and in terms of a fluid sense of lived and living space and time. That is, experience, space, and time are measured in terms of the lived present, lived past, and even lived future. That is actually the structure of what some of us call the here and now. And even in our therapy practices, my patient may be weeping for her lost partner, but the sobbing is here with me. It is not simply in the environment of my office, but the environment, the surrounding world, as the life world of the therapy session. Those sobs don't reach me and etch themselves on me as if I were a blank slate, but they reach me as I reach towards them across the unnoticed presence of the ground of our contacting. The contact boundary. I use it a little differently than you're probably accustomed to, so bear with me. This is part of the way in which I like to push ideas we take for granted. The contact boundary. This experience is situated in the life world of our common and uncommon experiences. Our experiences are emergent of the situation of our organism environment field. And I want to look at situation itself, and see how it may refine my themes. Other Gestalt therapists have explored this situation. Georges Wellens and Jean-Marie Robin and Margarita Spomola-Loeb and Johnny Franceschetti come to mind. And I'm not disagreeing with any of them, but I hope I'm adding to their approaches. Situation. Sometimes tracing the etymology of words is a mere game in which words are cleverly twisted and spun for fun. Or more seriously, the game can deconstruct their meanings in order to find something new. There is no absolute truth buried in words that we play with, but we use our play to discover our own meanings in the process of playing. The origin and roots of words do not give us access to their hidden truth, but some unnoticed meanings can come to life, even as we excavate words whose meanings we've taken for granted. We can see that they carry with them meanings accumulated over centuries. That is, by this play with etymology, the word is refreshed and new meanings expressed. And this is a contactful deconstruction of language. So, situatisa, situatia, and situatsa. Now that's my pronunciation, hopefully, of Polish, Ukrainian, and Russian words for situation. So I'm lucky here that situation in English is virtually the same word in Polish, Ukrainian, and Russian. So I return to English. The word situation has a Proto-Indo-European root, meaning to settle, to dwell, to be at home. Latin situs, is a place or a position, and is turned into a noun in medieval Latin to situation, and then in 15th century British English to situation. We are in our place. We are in our place when we are in our situation. Situation then is not simply our context. It is the place we occupy, our space. A material object does not have a place, but a person does. An object has a location. We know how to find it. We know where it is. We have a place, a situation. We experience it. A location is a point on the map, a longitude and an address. A street address, I may reside and be located at this or that address, but my home is the place where I live, where I am situated. Situation is a way of referring to particular dimensions of the field. It is the place we occupy, experiential, existential, and phenomenal. Notice I'm emphasizing place. And this is the contact boundary and inevitably the sequence of contacting itself. And this is the contact boundary. Gestalt therapy's emergent self is the temporal sequence of contacting as a function of the situation. And the sequence of contacting is very close to my notions in Gestalt therapy. Gestalt therapy's emergent self is the temporal sequence of contacting as a function of the situation. It is also the source of the situation itself. So when we consider situation as place, we must also consider it as a process in time, precisely in the manner we consider the emergent self. Understood in a Gestalt perspective, situation is the place of experience's emergence and the continuing contacting process. And more, it adds a fundamental sense that we are in the world together. We are experiencing the world together. Experience, contacting, emerges of the boundary of the organism, environment, life, world field. Consequently, human beings create and are made by their situation. We create the world and the world creates us. We're always building the home that itself is forming who we are. We find our place where we live with others, where we are at home with one another. We can be displaced and driven from our cities, yet the soil which covers our ground and from which life emerges, this soil is the source of our sense of ourselves as human beings who are nourished by and at home with one another. This is the basis for my claim that unlike Antaeus, while we may be thrown off balance and our legs thrown in the air, we never break our contacting with the soil of our homes. And let me take this further in terms of the contact boundary and the figure ground process and contacting, and relate them to our situation, our place, an amplified place, this place. We already know that experiences contacting is emergent of the contact boundary, where an I meets a not me. Contacting is the process of contacting some other. We know this. And since contact is a process in time, the contact boundary is continuous. This cannot be otherwise. It is not made and unmade. Yet the contact boundary emerges of the meeting of the organism environment. The contact boundary emerges of the meeting of the organism and the environment. A few minutes ago, I proposed that environment needs to be understood phenomenologically in terms of the life world. Then the life world includes the historical and social world, the past and the present, that are layered across the width and depth of the contact boundary, our homeland. It is not as if the contact boundary emerges out of nothing, or that contacting emerges of an empty field, or that experience lived and living has amnesia and is incapable of looking forward to a future. It is not that the emergence of contacting is done and we leave the contact boundary behind. This makes no sense to me and does not reflect actual experience. Contact emerges of an already present and continuing contact boundary marked by and populated by previous experiences of the life world. Contacting is of a social world of others who are always already there. And that phrase itself is a concept from phenomenology. Contacting is a social world of others who are always already there, and of a continuous contact boundary that is as present as the ground out of which experience emerges, and to my point here, constituting our experiences of our situation, our place, and homeland. Always already there. When we are alone, we're also not alone. Our situation is never empty. We can be thrown off our feet like Antaeus, yet the extent to which we are in touch with, contacting our phenomenal ground, we can draw nutrients from its soil and take comfort in the presence of others, and find ourselves balanced between our lived past and our to-be-lived future. And this is as simple as figure and ground. No figure can be split from its ground. No experience can be exiled from the contact boundary. The philosopher, Emmanuel Levinas, observed that in one worldview, the wanderer searches for and finds his home. Odysseus' odyssey ended when he returned to Ithaca. Levinas referred to this as the Athenian tradition. There is another tradition, said Levinas, the Jerusalem tradition, and this is of the wandering Jew who wanders but never reaches home. Never reaches home. And I think it was the philosopher and theologian and Martin Buber's contemporary, Franz Rosenzweig, who suggested that the wandering Jews carried their home wherever they went. A people of the Talmud, of the Bible, they arrived home each time they studied the text, when they were in touch with their ground. This home is not one to return to, but one that is always already there, along with us as we wander as migrants, along with us as we wander as migrants. And this is the home of the situation, our place of the life world, as I've been suggesting. And I propose this further. As we wander, as we become migrants and refugees, aliens and strangers of the life world, we carry along with us the soil and ground of our homeland. Contacting and the contact boundary are unstoppable. Creative adjusting is unstoppable. As we form and reform and are formed by the changing situation, we never start from nothing. The figures formed are always against the background of the contact boundary of the organism environment, life world field, filled with others, filled with our past and our heritage. The soil of our homeland is always under us. Our worlds can be shattered, but never annihilated. Where there is experiencing, there is contact boundary. And where there is contact boundary, there is contacting as a situated process of lived past to the lived future. We are mightier than the giant Antaeus. We are humans, simply humans. I appreciate your listening. I hope hope the translations have helped. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dan. You managed incredibly well despite my introduction. We have some time for comments and questions. Lots of hearts coming up. Thank you. How are you doing, Dan?
I'm doing well. I'm watching for the whatever. What's the opposite of a heart? Are there emojis for that? But I appreciate the hearts. My heart goes to you too. I feel it's
I wrote down as I was listening to you a question around whether what I wrote down is redemptive or dismissive. Right? That is the idea that we are always at home in contact in the situation in the life world. Is that a story about hope?
Yes.
For the migrants, or is it somehow? I don't think this is what you're saying, but is there something that misses the annihilation, the alienation, everything that you spoke to that goes with the migrant refugee experience?
Annihilation and displacement and othering the other. These are in the context of the life world and of our situation. And you say ethics. I hope, when we said hope, I always kind of get twitchy when I hear that word, because I don't know existentially if we can have hope, but we can have support, and we can move from the now into the next. And flowers do grow in the desert, but it's still a desert. It's still a desert. We still die. We die into the life world, but we still die. The other still dies. The other is inevitably leaves us. We're always being left. Heidegger talked about our own death is the central experience forming us as beings. But Levinas pointed out that it's not my death, it's the death of the other. And my reading of both of them is that it's not one or the other. They are both parts of my connected to both my mortality and my connection with those I love, those I hate, and even those I'm indifferent to. And that's in Gestalt therapy, because our ground is a social ground, it's a relational ground, and our ground cannot be annihilated. We may not like what happens to it, obviously. I mean, obviously, but it's not. But it's not annihilated. We're not.
And more appreciation coming through the chat. If there's anything, Lena or Carolina, you want to add, please do.
Who, me?
Yeah.
Я задумалась про если надежда нечто неопределенное, то что же тогда любовь?
So I was thinking that if hope is so indefinite, what can we say about love? How do you understand love and hate? For me, especially in the context of the current geopolitical situation, there is this contrast, and I feel it, especially when you talk to people from Ukraine, from Russia, from Belarus. Well, Belarusians also suffer, so that should be explained. How do you understand this, love and hate. What is love? What is hate?
Am I supposed to hear a translation?
Are you not getting the translation done?
No. What am I doing wrong?
Oh, Lena, can you repeat in English? That might be the easiest thing.
Okay.
Can you give a summary in English?
Okay. Do I need to switch to English channel?
No,
Yeah.
Dan, I think the problem is at the
Okay.
bottom of your screen, there is an icon that it has translation. I think you need to open the English.
Yeah, I did. It says
Okay,
original.
so
Okay.
my question in English. So if hope is something very unstable and uncertain, so my question is about love and envy. And this question is in regards to the geopolitical situation and all this stuff, what I meet here in Poland every time I run mixed groups with people from Russia, Ukraine, Belarus. So how do you philosophically understand that? So
Love and envy. I
yeah,
think, yeah. I mean, I think that they're
and
yeah.
what does it mean for us as therapists?
Well, if we see love and envy as derivative arising from the field, the more we can contextualize it, the more we can move it along in the process. I don't think we could ever eradicate anything like love or envy. I mean, is that answering your question, Lee?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's easy for us, and it's inevitable for us, and it's important for us to stand back and make moral evaluations. We can't. It's essential for us to do that, and at the same time, it comes from a ground of I put it this way: non-indifference, because things matter. Because things matter, we make these judgments, and that's part of the essential ground. And the reactions we'll have to the fact that things matter to us will be different. Then there's no, this is not theology. This is not Christian theology where love is the answer and love is the goal, but it's recognition that the diversity of human reactions to any given situation is the diversity of those reactions. And the more we can keep those we can keep them alive, keep them in flux rather than fixed. It's fixed love, fixed hate, rather than part of a process of adjusting to whatever the situation is. Does that make any sense?
Да.
When I make these things up, I have to realize that if I were writing this down, I'd have to look it over and see whether I agree. I appreciate your question. Why did I get it?
Okay. Bardzo dziękujemy, Dan.
Okay, thank you, Dan, for this wonderful presentation.
Now I got a translation. Well, thank you for giving me this opportunity. Anything I can do is to reach out and to hope to, in any gesture or action, to support what you all are going through. I'm trying to do, and my heart and my soul are along with you. My background, on my mother's side of family, I never knew my grandparents, but they came from Ukraine. So there's some kind of connection that I feel, and I'm glad to enact that connection with you as an embodied Gestalt therapist. And thank you for having me, and good luck with your conference. It's a wonderful idea. It's an idea that was demanded.
Спасибо тебе, Dan.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you so much, Dan.
Yeah, thank you.